everybody. I'm Candid Frank. He's David Morisuti. He of Sportsnet, me of CFL Talk. And of course, we love talking the Canadian Football League. And the Canadian Football League is getting more and more interesting. And for people like us who report on the Argonauts, it's good to know that they're at least looking like they may have a say in whether they make the playoffs or not.
Yeah, I mean, this is these next few weeks, it just seems every game has that like increased angst about it. Just knowing that how much each game means for the playoff race. Like there is really from now to the end of the season, I don't think there's a single team that has a throwaway game. I think every game means something to every team. It's very rare that we see that now. But especially this year, like this year has been crazy for that.
You're 100% right. And the fans know it. The reporters know it. The teams know it. The players know it. And TSN knows it. It's good for them. So it's good for everyone all the way around when the competitive level is, while, as close as it is, while some people might suggest, well, that's because a lot of teams aren't playing very good football. But how well you play is relative to how your opponents play. So it isn't always because you play badly sometimes, and we sometimes as fans have trouble admitting it, but sometimes teams just played better than your team. And that's what it comes down to here in this season. Will you play better than the other team? And last night's game, I'll start at last night's because it basically is an easy segue. We watched a game, and we've seen multiple games this year that could have gone either way with every team and every game. This one last night, it ended with a 1-point difference. I don't know. I guess numerically speaking, there is no closer game, right?
No, then like that's the thing, right? Like I thought going into this game, Ottawa was going to be in tough. I mean, watching that game, it looked like it. It looked like they were going to be in tough because that offense was struggling. They only put up 3 points in the first half. And then, the second half happens. And it's like, okay, they're starting to claw back into it a little bit. Then the fourth quarter happens. And boy, if you are a BC Lions fan, you are not happy. You are not. That's 2 losses in a row to the 2 teams with the worst record in the CFL.
The 2 teams you want to eliminate out of the playoffs that you can by beating them.
Yep. The 2 teams that if you were to obviously get be in the crossover, you need to have a better record then. And you just gave those 2 teams life, right? The Toronto game, they get that win and they're like, okay, we're not totally out of it. And even Ottawa, it was starting to look like Ottawa was going to be the team that sadly was going to be stuck at the bottom. And then they get this one, and it's like, don't unplug the life support just yet. Sorry for the graphic term, but it's like to me that's the best way to kind of.
It is what it is for sure. The top 2 teams in the division in the East they have a game in hand, but they are only Hamilton 2 wins ahead. Montreal only 1 win ahead of both now Ottawa and Toronto, who have both played 12 games, and the previous 2 I mentioned have only played 11. So those 2 teams at the bottom need the teams above them to do some extra losing, needless to say, to ensure that they have a shot at making the playoffs. And now we have BC sitting at 5-7, while both Toronto and Ottawa sit at 4-8. So now there's a swing of 1 game. That's all there is, considering just a couple of weeks ago how both the Argos and the Red Blacks looked like, well, they were death warmed over. They were just a walking dead. And a couple of wins in a row can do what it's done for both those teams. Now, even Winnipeg, that's in 3rd, is not running away from BC and Edmonton. They're only a win ahead of BC and 2 wins ahead of Edmonton. which takes us to we just fleshed out how we started this conversation, which is it's a close race in the Canadian Football League for the playoffs. And last night's game, if you're the Argos, there are fans maybe that'll be split as to whether that result was a good one. I say it was a good one because the team that was ahead of them lost a game,
Yeah.
and the team behind them winning means that the Argos control, just like Ottawa does now, whether they finish ahead of the other team. Ottawa and Toronto now are at level, and now they get to control whether they can beat that other team in the race to the end of the season.
The thing with this is it's so interesting because sometimes you wonder why the schedule makers do things the way they do, and then they happen to kind of end up actually bringing extra intrigue because what BC, especially on the BC end of things, it's a brutal loss, and now guess what? They got to come back to it again and have to beat Ottawa again. Like they got back to back against Ottawa. So if you're BC, you get a chance of redemption there. But if you're Ottawa too, it's just like, oh, we get to do this again, and we can really put ourselves in an even better position. And then to make things even more intriguing, in 2 weeks, end of pretty much almost the end of the month, BC and Toronto play each other again. Like it's setting up to be so fascinating in that regard. And yeah, if you're the Argos, last night that was probably the result you wanted to see because it did exactly as you said. It kept BC that much closer. They're within a game now, right? And so obviously Toronto's got to worry about themselves and worrying about their wins. They're going to be watching today's games for sure, Montreal and Hamilton, to see what happens there because again, there's a lot of chess pieces that are kind of happening right now. But
and
I also
scoreboard watching.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I do think that what I do like about the way that this is kind of all played out is the games have been close. There hasn't like there were some blowouts to start the year. There's been some blowouts since, but we've been seeing quite a few close matchups. Quite a few of them, and it's made just this whole what we're seeing, this whole playoff race has been more intriguing because of that.
The concerning thing for BC, if we can refer to the left coast for a moment, the major concern for BC is that they got beat in back-to-back games by backup quarterbacks. Now, I wouldn't really call Arbuckle a backup quarterback,
True.
But technically speaking, right? So now you've got your number one quarterback, and you're up against Crump, who is a quarterback that Ottawa moved away from, so much so they traded for a guy in Winnipeg to bring him in to be their starting quarterback. So there's two things there that are happening at once. That is, Ottawa gains confidence with the situation at quarterback. While if you're BC, you have to ask yourself a question of what does it take for you to have a lineup with your starting quarterback and win, especially when that quarterback looks like he's playing well. It's not really on him, and that's got to be scary for BC and their fans for that matter.
Well, and that's been my thing with BC all season. If you're going to ask me why things haven't gone the way, has Nathan Rourke been perfect? No, he hasn't been perfect, but Nathan Rourke has been anything but the problem in BC. Last night was a bit more. Last night, the two interceptions, they don't help. When your defense is struggling, right, the way that they have, we saw it. We talked about it in Toronto. You can't make mistakes because your defense isn't good enough to overcome the mistakes. And that was proven yet again against Ottawa, where you don't want to give. I mean, Dustin Crum, we come to expect that, he's not exactly, top caliber, as you said, and there's a reason why they went out and got another quarterback. But that was probably his best game I've ever seen him play, right? He moved the ball down the field, both through the air with his legs. Found a way to make big plays. I mean, it's interesting that he kind of outdueled Nathan Rourke in a way, but if you're BC, you're just hoping that Nathan Rourke had just a blip in the radar. Yes, he put up yards, but the 2 interceptions, he's got to play cleaner football than this.
We've learned a couple of lessons when it comes to quarterback. We've had it reaffirmed that for the most part this year, and I say for the most part for a reason, that your number one quarterback is necessary for you to play well in the Canadian Football League. The other lesson we've learned is that even if they do play well, that doesn't guarantee a win. Look at Bo Levi Mitchell. Look at Arbuckle. Their seasons. They've statistically have had incredible seasons, but it hasn't really created a situation where Hamilton's dominant. The 6-5 record, I don't think, speaks to dominance. And of course, the Argonauts are struggling. They're well below 500, while their quarterback has played really well. So this has been a new version of the quarterback controversy, if you will, in the Canadian Football League. The original controversy has always been keeping your quarterback healthy. But now we're beginning to see, I think, where offenses work very well in the Canadian Football League, but the bend and not break by the defenses is being enhanced for whatever reason, where defenses now, when they show up and don't bend like in the red zone or they give away big plays that aren't point drivers, and then when it comes time to get the points, the defense does stand up. That's been the common thread I've seen in the Canadian Football League this year that I haven't seen in previous years, David.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't. It'd be nice if we could have the projections of where stats are going this year and player performances, because is it just me, or is there like the quarterback play in this, like in terms of production in yards, has really been on another level, unless you're going up against Calgary. Unless that's the only team. Like if you're a quarterback, you've done well against every team except Calgary.
Absolutely.
You kind of get the theme I'm getting at here.
Yeah.
I think the defenses, especially, I don't like to call out positional things, because I know it's more than just one position that handles how many yards a quarterback throws in a game, but it feels like defensive backs have really struggled this year.
They've struggled this year, and I think offenses have had a chance to wrap their heads around field position that the league in the past few years has donated, has given, has taken away from defenses and given to offenses. You know, starting after kicks or touchdowns, where you start. I don't think we're seeing as much because of where the ball is placed by the officials at the end of a series or whatever happens, right? It's further up. So now most defenses are starting with their back, with really an offense that has a real open playbook, and the defenses are always on literally defense. There is no, because back in there's also what I'll call defense being in the offensive position. For example, when teams are backed up against their goalposts, right? That gives the defense a chance to turn the ball over better than it does when they're at midfield. My point is they're starting in good offensive positions because of ball placement that was changed over the past couple of years. And I think we're starting to see, to answer your question, why offenses, I think, are being more successful now.
Yeah. And I think the, like we talked about the changes being made, very subtle changes, but changes that were made a few years ago in the was it a few years ago with some of the rules, right? And how things were being done, just to kind of help offenses a bit. I also just think that the talent that's come up here, right? And the talent that's here too in Canada, like amongst the Canadians. Just I find that the offensive talent, receivers, running backs, have really taken a big step forward. Because we always talked about how good the defensive players have been. Um, I feel like we've really found a good, like an elite group of offensive players that have come up here.
You know what? To your statement, I'd like to run something beside that. We have spent years talking about concentrating on, well, receivers when they come, when they come to the Canadian Football League, quarterbacks, there's a large adjustment, all this kind of stuff, the waggle and all that stuff. But I think it's a bigger challenge for defenses and for players that are defenders to learn what it takes to play on the Canadian, and I'll highlight by saying the Canadian football field, the size, the width, all that stuff, the length, the width. That is hard for defenses to read, and the Canadian Football League. I said earlier, and I think because the main theme is the Canadian Football League has done a lot to protect offenses, to increase offense, and made things more challenging for defenses, going back to the pass interference call. That in itself releases a bit of the leash that defenses can put on an offense. There's less opportunity for defenders to defend. The question, though, David, I think if we agree on that's the case, is it better for the game that offenses are more successful? Do we like these games that are 34-33? And are we willing to put up with the odd one that are 52-12?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because
that's what your comment is pointing to, right?
Yeah, in a way, like just the parody. Like we've seen, I think in all of sports, we've really started to see parody take form in a lot of ways. But I don't really have an explanation as to how it's gone to this point. Like how things have kind of magnified this way into, okay, we're now getting, I would say what I'll say about it is, like, I'm looking at the top of the receiving yards, and it's not owned by one team, right? Like Keon Hatcher's one. Then you got a Hamilton with Kenny Lawler. Then you have DeMonte Coxey, who, by the way, has missed the last couple of games. Keyshawn Johnson, Justin McInnes. That's okay. BC has a couple at the top there, but you got Debsky. Then you got Tyler Snead, Eugene Lewis, even though he's kind of, he's had good games and bad games. But what I'm trying to say here is every team feels like they have that star or number one guy, like someone that they could put out against another team and say, no, we got the top receiver in the league.
We got the game breaker.
I think the dispersion of talent is a lot different than we have seen probably the last few years.
Well, David, I think the answer to the question is just staring you in the face. Why there's more, why leagues are more competitive. The introduction of the cap has made that positive, where everybody's limited to how much money they can spend. The biggest challenge, it's not it is. It's the money. It's the money that's spent. I mean, if even because in the Canadian Football League, it even goes to the coaches, right? So the competitive nature of the league is based on how much you can spend on coaches as well as players. So you have that extra layer of equality that's created, or equity that's created between teams, and that is part of the reason why we have parity the way we do. But it also explains why sometimes some teams play really badly, because once the cap has been determined, now those decisions are made come home to roost. If you have the wrong coaches or wrong coach not as much, but wrong coaches more, now how do you replace those coaches? You can't, because you can't get rid of them and get other coaches that are better. So parity, it's the parity. I think it has something to do with the fact that, again, because of the cap, because of the management cap, no team can run away from another team by spending money on good coaches, and teams that are in trouble have difficulty, like Calgary did for 2 years, of fielding a really good team. Right? They had a hard time doing that because they literally, starting with Bo Levi Mitchell, they started getting rid of the big contract guys. Why do you have to do that? Well, because you need the money to bring in the players that you want to make the team better. So yeah, the cap to me, in many levels, especially in the Canadian Football League, because of the management cap, it causes basically restraint and anyone running away with anything.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that we look at it the management cap. I mean, it just feels like a sore subject in a
I
lot of
know it
ways.
does to you, but David, it's helped in taking coaches that are really good, that are in,
Yeah.
in the below the head coach. It's given them opportunity, right? We've seen it ever. We've seen it with Dinwiddie. We've seen it with Mace. Wherever we look, BC's hoping it works for them. That, and we know it's worked in Edmonton. It's worked in Montreal. So I get it. The management cap's a sore spot for you, but just so we can let you vent a little bit. Give us the continue talking about the management cap and why it bothers you.
Why it bothers me? Well, it bothers me because we could be so much better. It could be so much like I still think that we're not getting the best version of this league. Now there's been some really good moments. There's been some decent games. I always think it could be better. I always
Right.
think that.
So how does the management cap get in the way of that?
Well, you don't have as many coaches on staffs as you would like to have. You don't have as maybe the some teams would rather have a certain coach over another, but guess what? The cap doesn't afford that to them because they can't afford to have that coach. Like that's where my thinking lies, is that what the league has, and a lot of teams say, well, we like our coach staff. But if you really ask them, they say, well, we would rather, we think we can get an even better guy, but we can't afford it. Or a player, a coach has to wear more hats than they should because teams can't afford to bring in anyone else. Or, why is
That's another way of them giving head coach a raise.
yes, give him 3-4 different jobs on top of the main one that
And the
he
money
does
that's flagged for that or tagged for that.
right? I just think that if you want to see an even like it's been the league I this year the play has been pretty up and down. There's been some inconsistencies, but I would chalk that up more so to maybe it's just the way the schedule has been. I don't know if it's a coaching thing, but I just think that I also just think it's just teams have found ways to close the gap in a lot of ways. Yes, we have a couple of teams that are under quite a few teams that are under 500 right now. I think we got 4 right between
They're all
Toronto,
underwater.
BC, Ottawa, and Edmonton. But we don't have that team that's winless. We don't have like those Ottawa teams that were 1-7, 1-8, 1-10.
5, David. Montreal's under 500 now too.
Right. And so Montreal as well. Like to me, it's a close league. I do get that, but I would have expected at least to have one of these other, like at least have the top 2 teams in these be 500. Right. To me, it just goes back to is it talent? Is it coaching? Is it something else? I wish I really had the full answer.
I can tell you it's checked various boxes. On the other hand, we have 2 teams that have been dominant: 9-2 and 8-3 are Saskatchewan and Calgary, alternatively. are the two teams that have been dominant. Everybody else has been win lose, maybe lose more than win. That's what we've had. So this has been we're back to the Eastern Division where we don't have a dominant team this year. Montreal and Toronto and Hamilton have had their moments in the past eight whatever years where they've been dominant. They've taken turns being dominant, and it's led to them winning Grey Cups. It's previewed their greatness because in the cases of Montreal and Toronto, they won Grey Cups before they were dominant, at least by definition, before they were dominant, which I think adds to the point that you're making about the fact that there is a pretty level playing field in the Canadian Football League. Um, Although the West historically has had the better record than the East, and this year we're seeing it's manifesting itself again after we thought that the East finally had got their stuff together and were able to compete evenly with the Western Division teams. We're back to a point where finishing first in the East, the feat can be done by playing 500 football or just a little better than 500. So that to your point, yes, it's more competitive, and one of the reasons it's check the boxes. The coaching is better. It's more evened out. When coaches get really good on a team, teams can't afford to keep them. A guy like Mace goes to Saskatchewan, and it's good opportunities from a certain perspective, David. There's two things that happen that are positive for players and coaches in the Canadian Football League. There's an opportunity for you to excel because the guys that did excel and wanted more money become they get in a situation where they price themselves out of the market. We see that repeatedly in the Canadian Football League now. We're seeing big names that were in one city moving over to another city. Look at Lawler. You mentioned a fella that's in Ottawa that was big in Montreal, went to Edmonton, and now is, in Ottawa. That in itself creates I'll call it equity, not equality. It creates the equity, the perception of things being a pretty level playing field.
Yeah, right. And teams are just trying to find the best ways to level that playing field. It's certainly not easy. Like I don't envy some of these teams that have to find ways to add talent when maybe it's tougher to recruit talent. But we've seen through the draft, we've seen through free agency. If you got money, if you got opportunity, players will come. Players will definitely come, and I think I give credit where there's certain players that are being recycled throughout the league, not as many as before. You are seeing quite a few new faces, or at least players getting opportunities in places maybe where they had them in the past.
Absolutely. Let's go to week 13 games. We jumped ahead to the week 14 because it was important. It was last night, and we talked about the victory by the Red Blacks over the Lions, 34-33. In the first game of last week, Winnipeg lost to Saskatchewan 34-30. This was a game that, in David's world, it's predictable. The score was predictable. The fact that Saskatchewan won, it's something you've talked about over the past couple of years, that they've always been the better team, but this year's their opportunity for them to show it.
Yeah, no, it is a big opportunity for them to show it, and that, like, we have seen, how many times have we seen Saskatchewan get off to a half decent start to the season, only for things to kind of limp to near the end, or they
Or in the playoff game, they don't play
right,
up,
or they don't, or they lose steam coming into the playoff game. We know Saskatchewan's a good team. We know they have a good coaching staff. There's a lot of things to like there. But at the same time, we also know it's a vulnerable team. And it's going to remain a vulnerable team until they finally prove it and get to a Grey Cup. Right? And this is their season. Like, don't get me wrong. They are the best team in the CFL record-wise. But you wonder, are they the best team in the CFL? There's going
And
to still be questions about that, in my opinion.
Calgary offers the statistics to support that they might be as close to the best team,
Yeah.
obviously, as any team in the Canadian Football League. Saskatchewan needs to find ways to win. They have all the tools. They have the running game. They have the passing game. They have the quarterback. They have the defense, and they have the fan base. They have everything it takes to be a winner, and they won at home to Winnipeg. Let's go to Toronto visiting Hamilton. You and I went there. We had the opportunity to go to the game and watch the Argos on the road, and in the Cat Dome, if you will, where the rabid Cat fans, who are not a very welcoming group when it comes to Toronto and their fans, saw one incredible game, David. It was a game of the ages, and they talk about Labor Day Classic, and it amazes me. I mean, this weekend was amazing, except for the Calgary Edmonton game, right? They didn't disappoint. There were two Labor Day classics in words: Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, and of course Toronto and Hamilton. And that 3-minute drill was something to see. It was an amazing experience.
I like to me, let's start with the Toronto game. I thought I'm gonna sound maybe a bit critical, but I thought the game at times was sloppy.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
didn't think both teams were very sharp, but what it provided was entertainment. There's a lot of entertaining plays and things like that. A close game, which is what I wanted. I wanted it to be a close game because we had seen these games get out of hand early, and we got a classic ending. We got a classic finish. And to me, that's all you can ask for. Really, that's all you can ask for in these games. And so, I look at I look at the. Let's start with the Hamilton side of things. We always start with Toronto. When is this team ever going to tell its fan base we can handle it? We can handle the pressure. Because I'm sorry, if you're a Hamilton Tiger Cats fan, you're sick to your stomach because they talked all the smack. They say this is our year, and then they go and they squander a win. Like even Toronto was winnable. Like for a Hamilton, this is a winnable game. You have a lead with 18 seconds left. 18 seconds. And you lose. You come out of the losing end of it. And it's what's concerning about it is it's another loss at home. They're 2-3 at home. They've lost, I think, 3 of their last 4 games. Like this was supposed to be Hamilton's year, and what that loss does is it throws a little doubt into their abilities now.
They've fallen down to the rest of the teams.
They lost badly to Saskatchewan. Like they were licking their wounds after that one. They lost a heartbreaker in overtime to BC. Then they lose this one to Toronto. They almost lost to Edmonton. Like, I'm sorry, but if you're thinking right now that the CFL East division is wrapped up and Hamilton's got it in the bag, guess again. If you're in Montreal, you love that result because now you get a chance to come in this week and say, thank you. We want the East for ourselves now. Now, easier said than done because of the injuries in Montreal.
Montreal's paying for a decision they made against Toronto a few weeks ago.
Exactly. But I do think that, Hamilton's left the door open. And the last thing you want to do in this league is leave the door open because we always talked about it. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Well, and Hamilton is doing the exact opposite right now what they did last year. They had a big finish. It wasn't enough. This year, great start. How are they going to finish?
Absolutely. I look at the season for I guess for Hamilton, they need to be okay. What I saw in that game against Toronto, what I saw with my own eyes, is I saw their quarterback, Bo Levi Mitchell, who should be smarter than this, when he got that touchdown, that looked like, oh, well, 18 seconds left, we just won the game. And he was very proud of the fact that they had this game under control. What ends up happening when you're a little too vociferous when it comes to that kind of situation, and you look at the opposition and say, "Ha, we got you." You just lit a fire under the opposition. That's a lesson that has to be learned by every player in the Canadian Football League and in sports. Be careful what you say before the game is over, because you can impact the game. We know of many players, given the motivation to play to the top of their game, they will accept the challenge. And what happened is, maybe because the Argos were not respected by Hamilton and Bo Levi's attitude with 18 seconds left, they really got taught. They got taught a lesson. It ain't over, baby, till it's over. And that's what Toronto proved. And this is a problem of Hamilton's creation as much as it is of Toronto's. The situation that we're in here now, where Toronto looks like they can make the playoffs and they can handle both Hamilton and Montreal, not because of anything to do just with Toronto. It's about how your opponent treats you with respect. We watched the Montreal Alouettes march to a Grey Cup championship, and the whole playoff, Fajardo talked about how his team was disrespected. Football players are very proud, man. You don't disrespect a football player, and especially because the teams are so tight that it's like a family. That we hear it all the time. We even see evidence of it. So it's not an illusion. So once you insult a family, be careful. Sometimes you have to, when at the end of a game, if you're beating the crap out of a team, you don't celebrate when you get a touchdown. The same way a team's own pride doesn't allow them to celebrate when they're getting a touchdown and they're coming to within 40 points of the opposition. You don't really celebrate, because what are you celebrating, right? So there's certain behaviors that you can display that cause you problems. And I think in that game we saw it when Bo Levi Mitchell jumped the gun about how great he was and pointing to his veins because he has ice in his veins. Well, guess what? You just told somebody, you challenged somebody, and sometimes when people are challenged, they rise to the occasion. We saw Arbuckle and the Argonauts do that.
Well, and that's the big one there is that people, all the fans are like, "Oh, Bo, where's that celebration now?" Because yeah, it was a great play by him. I think it was 2-3 plays down the field, and they score. But here's the thing: that game should have been in overtime. You know why? You had a chance at the 2-point conversion to make the field goal a tie rather than a win, and the play got bungled. Right? He had an opportunity, but Toronto, to their credit, was able to sack him. But as much as you want to say ice in your veins, the job wasn't done yet. Yes, the touchdown was big. You got the lead. The job wasn't done yet. And I think if you're Scott Milanovich, you're going to your team and you're saying, we don't celebrate until that whistle's done. We don't celebrate until we've been declared the winner of the game.
And you know what, David? What even set up that 2-point conversion failure that was necessary for Hamilton were the single points, the surprising single points the Argonauts got in that game. The bounces that they got into the end zone, and those 2 points that they got, those 2 singles they got, David, are the 2 points made those extra, were really the reason they had the extra 2 points, because Hamilton did not get the ball out of the end zone. and they it wasn't a kick that was for 40 or 45 yards. Those were 80-yard kicks, 60-yard, 65-yard kicks. So if you can't defend against that and you allow a point, it's not as bad as getting to the red zone and not scoring, but it's an advantage that we saw in the game we're talking about now and the game that we talked about earlier, where it was 34-33. And in this game, because the Argos had, those 2 points, they were able to win with a field goal.
Yeah, exactly. I do think I do think that you look at this game specifically and you say execution means so much, right? You can Toronto, I felt in certain situations were better at executing in pressure moments. They were down they were down late and they needed a touchdown to get ahead, and Mackay Polk comes up with that big catch on one. Guy hasn't practiced more than 2-3 days, and he makes a big play in the game. They go for, I think it was the third down, and some people said to kick the field goal, and they went for the touchdown. Like Toronto, I felt the reason why they won that game, the pressure moments didn't phase them, didn't scare them. They didn't play the safe game. And I think that's something that Ryan Dinwiddie was guilty of in the past. But I think he's found a bit of trust in his team to go out and make the plays when they need to.
He's also contributed to the mentality that they got to get going off the start. Over the past few weeks, he's made decisions that basically said, we got to score now. We got to score now. And he's given the team opportunity to do that. He's released the hounds, if you will. And the team let him down a few times, but he's still doing it. But I think that's now one of the things that has changed with the Argos is the slow starts. The biggest thing that happened, I think, in that game, David, was the quick start that the Argonauts had. Hamilton responded, of course. But that was what was important to the Argos going into Hamilton, is they needed to get ahead early. They needed to play well early, and they did. And then they were given an opportunity to be close, so that to make a big play at the end of the game, they had the big play to make to win the game, which they executed and did a great job. Speak to the situation when the clock ran out, and now Brissett stepped out of bounds. There was a moment there where Hamilton fans felt, well, there's no time left. They didn't score. Game over. How surprised were you? And did you notice, or were you paying attention to the fact there was 1 second left?
I was totally on it right from because. So here's the thing. I'm watching this go down. I said he's either when I saw him running with the ball, I said he's either scoring or there might be just enough time. When he stepped out, I said, I think there was still time on the clock. I first was going like, he got to get in the end zone now. Like, you're going to run out of time. But I knew that if he had got pushed out to a certain time before he made the push to the end zone, then there would have still been enough time to do a play. Did I know it was going to be a second? Well, it was tough. It's hard to see. That official clock isn't the official game clock. I couldn't see the TSN feed from where I was. So I knew that there was at least still time.
I was on the field. I didn't have a clue. I was on the field.
But let's just say there are a lot of people on that Argos sideline and even on the field that were not happy with the decision made by Brissett. It could have been worse. Like, they could
Arbuckle
have.
Was very upset. He used some words I can't repeat.
Yeah, he was frustrated. I think Mackay Polk, when the play happened, was kind of telling Brissett, you needed to get out of bounds, man. Like, we almost lost. Like, we could have lost the game right here. And it would have. Imagine though, Frank, if they did lose that game. If that play didn't happen the way it happened, what are we talking about now?
Are we talking about Brissett being an ex-Argo? I mean, that is. Let's be clear. There was this. I'm not saying there was, but the air of selfishness entered into the game at that point, based on what Brissett decided to do. And everybody on the broadcast and all of us know that everybody in that huddle was told, get out of bounds. Make sure there's time on the clock. We can win this with a field goal. Don't take a chance of the clock running out on you. So when Brissett made that decision, I say it had an air of selfishness because of that. The problem, the temptation was, David, when he found himself that close to the goal line, he thought he could win it right then and there. And he didn't. I don't think at the moment he didn't realize that. I don't think he realized the risk he was taking in losing the game. All he saw was the end zone. And I don't know, David, I'm not a professional football player, but I can't imagine the training that they have is to get into the end zone their whole life. They got to get in the end zone. They got to get in the end zone. They're not practicing going out of bounds as much as they are going into the end zone. And I think the default button, basically, it wasn't selfishness. It was the default button of scoring that took over. That's what I think. I'm not trying to defend his
action. I think he saw an opportunity to score, put the game to bed, done. No ifs, ands, or buts. And he did not realize how
risky what he was doing was.
And I think there's also a bit of, I want to be the guy. I want to be the guy that ends this.
That's an inbred thing with football players. Everybody wants to be the guy, and everybody can, right down to the kicker who's not on the field much. But in this situation, in all honesty, if you really want to think about the whole thing, what happens if the field goal's missed? Right? And when I say what if, I'm not saying it because I'm imagining that's a possibility. It's a reality. There's no guarantee the field goal is going to be kicked. So, again, I'm saying Brissett had reason to go into the end zone because nobody's going to tell anyone that the field goal is a guarantee.
Yeah.
The whole point of the field goal and about that catch, which is, again, goes against what Brissett did. Where they were, it would have been very difficult to get a field goal. Where he caught the ball was a good area to kick the field goal. Where he got the ball, was, in my opinion, that close to the goalpost makes it a little more interesting. The field goal kick. If you're out 20 yards, I think it's safer. I think once you start getting too close to the goalpost, I think there's an issue there. It's concerning. Because it's so guaranteed.
But what if there's a bad snap? What if there's a bad hold? What if Liram slipped, or not even slipped? What if he shanks it, which generally you don't see? They practice for these moments. But yeah, probably for Brissett, he says, I got a chance to end the game. I'm going to do it. And to his credit, as much as people don't agree with his decision, he didn't shy from it. He says, I knew what I was trying to do there. I wanted to score and end the game. I give him, but at the same time, I think he realized maybe trying to do it all yourself wasn't exactly the best call either.
But it reminds us of the reason you play the game, and it reminds us of the reason why teams win, David, as opposed to lose. Sometimes, the aggressiveness that a player has is more useful to the team, the coach and company, because, and in this case, we're seeing an example of it. Sometimes it's best to have someone who's aggressive and wants to accomplish what they're going to do and work as hard to get there, where the coach can say, okay, I need to pull you back a little bit. That's easier to do than to tell a player, you're not aggressive enough. You're not trying hard enough. Because there's nothing you can't pull a person forward, but you can hold a person back. So if it comes down to did what Brissett did on balance, taking everything into consideration that we've talked about, what he did wasn't a bad thing. And he's lucky, though. The lucky part is while doing a good thing, bad things can happen. And in this case, he was lucky because his decision, I won't even call it selfish anymore. His decision could have gone bad. But we established also the kick can fail. So, we're talking about doing what you can to win. I'd rather have that in a player than one who doubts they have the ability to win the game.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? But we have also seen this Toronto team in a lot of close games throughout the years. They know what to do in these moments in a lot of ways. The play call was perfect, right? Maybe Luke Olson broke down the play. He said it wasn't perfectly executed, but it worked, right? And part of why it worked, one of the defenders that was attempting to tackle Brissett had slipped and was playing catch up. And so maybe if he doesn't slip, he's in a better position to make the play. Sometimes little thing can make a big difference. A little bit of luck along the way too.
Wow,
I think
2 defenders go down and you're standing and you're left standing with the ball. Boy, that's going your way if I've ever seen it.
Exactly, right? And so that's where like to me that's the crucial element there is getting the breaks to go your way, because they kept saying it. They hadn't had the breaks go their way this year.
No.
Sometimes though you have to make your own breaks though, right?
And that's just it. You have to cash in on the breaks. If you don't cash in, then they're not breaks anymore. You're just not, there's a lot to be said for execution, but there's also a lot to be said for being opportunistic. And the difference between, because you're highlighting this, the difference between the great teams and the teams that aren't so great are the great teams are the ones that take opportunities and turn them into points, that are opportunistic. Those are the teams that are the best always. They're always the best teams because everybody in every game, there's opportunity. And the teams that take advantage of the most opportunities are the ones that are going to win. And that's basically execution, right? Doing what needs to be done dependent on every situation, because football is a well planned out game. There are situations, we talked about that touchdown and about how it played out. Situational football is something that teams have to grasp and do their best to assure themselves of a victory, which goes back again to Bo Levi Mitchell basically rubbing in the Argos players that were on the field's face that they were going to win this game. That's situational football. He created a situation, and you as the Argos, you go, okay, this is an opportunity for us to show them who we are, and then they execute and then they win. So it's all about what you do with the opportunities you're given. And sometimes motivation is given to you. And in that case, it was. And this game did more for the motivation of the Argos, not to believe that they're a good team. We go in that locker room after every game, David, and the players always say the same thing, especially we've heard it during this terrible season they've had. And let's be clear, it's been a terrible season. They have never wavered from the fact that they all believe that this is a better team than the results have shown this season. And this was the first game where the team, I think, the relief of finally seeing what they're capable of happening.
Yeah, no, and at the end of the day, this is this is a big for the Argos. You look at this game and it continues this idea of, okay, we put ourselves in a hole. Now we have to put in the work to get ourselves out of it. Right? This is just another victory that, they could have easily have let the game get away from them, but they found a way to keep going. They found a way to keep going, and I give them credit for it because, they could have easily have said, "Yeah, no, we're gonna not hang the towel, not throwing the towel," but not. It's just everything is going out of our. It's kind of going out of our way. Things are not coming up for us. They finally were able to get that break for themselves.
Yeah, and again, it's being opportunistic, and that confidence that they've always had to have that asserted and verified in this game. But let's be clear about something as well. I want to be clear about this. Hamilton is a much better team than they've been in the past. Hamilton has a quarterback that knows how to win. The negative stuff that I said is just part of the game. Bo Levi Mitchell is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play in the Canadian Football League. He left a team that felt his time had passed. He was given a second opportunity. And as I said, from the day that he signed with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, it's a perfect match. Hamilton is a town, is an organization that has done over and over again, have taken players whose careers maybe weren't at their peak. They were dropping a little bit. And a lot of the quarterbacks that have had success in Hamilton have been elsewhere and not doing well and then resurrected in Hamilton. And I predicted that this was a possibility for Bo Levi Mitchell, and he's not disappointed me. And Hamilton, David, right now are missing an opportunity to ensure finishing first because Montreal is the team that really was, from the beginning of this season, they were the threat to finish first. We knew, David, come on, we both knew that the Argos were in tough with the amount of players they were losing, the injury to the starting quarterback. Where we're sitting today was predictable at the beginning of the season, David. I felt this way, and right now they're getting a chance to resurrect their own. Toronto's getting a chance to resurrect their season. Hamilton has to do the same.
Yeah, Hamilton's at the point now where they got to hit the reset button. They're doing good things, but I can't remember who said it, but someone was like to me, Kenny Lawler hasn't been Kenny Lawler. Now he did eventually make some big plays in this game, but going into this game, he hadn't been the same player that we saw the last few weeks, the first few weeks of the season. Bo Levi Mitchell, he was like almost a lock as MOP. I'd say now there's definitely a conversation to be had that there's other players that I would put above him. I just think that there is Hamilton needs to understand that nothing is guaranteed for them. They need to be a little more desperate. They need to be more in the moment, understanding what needs to be done
and take advantage of opportunities given.
Exactly. They can't let plays go to waste. They had a drive to start, and what did they do? Bad snaps led to it becoming a field goal instead of what looked like was supposed to be a touchdown. I think that's just to me it's mind-boggling in a way, especially with a coach like Scott Milanovich who's done it, who's won at Grey Cups, who understands what it takes to win in this league, and for them to do that, I shake my head because like what's needed? What do they need to do to finally get it, to get things working?
Yeah, and then you've got the fans who are really proud of their team. Hamilton wanting to see their team do well, and it looks like they're on a roll, and the insecurity of the Hamilton Tiger Cat fans exists still as well, because that's the kind of game that tells Hamilton fans, here we go again, because they went through a couple of Grey Cups exactly that looked like that, where their team going in should have been the winner. They had the ability to win the game, and they didn't. And they did it in disappointing fashion. And I don't think there's a more disappointing way to lose than the way they lost to Toronto in the Labor Day game. In all honesty, that's gonna sting. So the next game that Hamilton comes out at, they've got stuff to prove. I say it again. They've got to prove they're the team they thought they were at the beginning of the season. And it's the East is wide open. The West is wide open because they have an opportunity to have one of those teams come over and cross over and make the playoffs because of the way the East is going. So we began this program by talking about how competitive a season it's been. I guess it's only just that we conclude the program in that regard. Your last comment.
Yeah, no, I think if you're a team right now that, like, to me, out of all the teams this past week that should feel the most secure about themselves, it has to be Calgary. Calgary has shown there's little chinks to their armor. Their 3 losses have come against Ottawa and Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, this team, I don't know, like, they own the West. They're 6-0 against the West. They're dominating the line of scrimmage. They're not giving up much to the air. Like, if I'm a team right now, I don't want to play Calgary. I would hope that Calgary shows a little bit of a step back, but it ain't happening right now. It ain't happening.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing this, David.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, we got the rest of the weekend. The Argos are off till next week. Canadian Football League today. We got 2 games. Enjoy it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Candid Frank. He's David Morris-Sudi. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you.